How's it going, guys? We're gonna continue Dead Frontier Upgrade 2. Back where I left off. Right here.
I climbed the flight of stairs to the ground floor and then headed through a small doorway into the main building. The mall was eerily quiet, and despite my best efforts to keep a low profile, every footstep seemed to echo throughout the entire building. The shutters on most stores had been closed, presumably in an attempt to keep the infected from roaming freely. Frequent bloodstains were an ever-present reminder of how little the shopkeepers had achieved. A sickening feeling in my gut told me this place had been the scene of a terrible massacre. As I slowly made my way to the central square, I recalled that the pharmacy was up on the second floor. I could see no signs of life, human or otherwise, and so decided to ascend the nearest escalator and secure the medicine the folks back at the farm so desperately needed. Before I could reach it, the silence was broken by a tremendous bang, swiftly followed by something whizzing an inch past my head. Someone had taken a shot at me.
And you take cover, try to talk to them, run, or shoot back. They talk to them. I know that they're not trustworthy, but good luck with that. You can either run, but they'll shoot you easily. You shoot back, that's stupid, man. You need survivors. So I suggest one.
I immediately dove for the nearest pillar as several more bullets were fired. Amazingly, I wasn't hit.
Good.
The pillar offered temporary respite from my assailants, but it would only be a matter of time before they outflanked me. I couldn't see them, but I could hear them maneuvering on the floor above. I had to act fast if I was to have any chance of survival.
Trying to negotiate means like talk to them, make a run for it. Of course, there's this shoot you, but you need a reason. Open fire, you killed survivors. Why is that? So I suggest one.
I realized that they had me totally pinned down, and that my chances of surviving a firefight were slim. My only hope was to try and convince them to let me live. I cried, "I'm not infected," as loud as I could. There was a pause, followed by a voice full of fear and doubt. "Prove it." He ordered me to put my gun on the ground and step slowly out from behind the pillar with my hands up. I could see no alternative, and so I reluctantly did what I was told.
I'm alive. See? See that?
As I stood defenseless in the open, I explained that I hadn't been bitten, and that I meant them no harm. The survivors whispered among themselves for a moment, before one of them asked me to take off my clothes so they could see for themselves. I undressed, and a man armed with a shotgun came down to inspect me. Finally satisfied that I wasn't about to eat them, the man asked me why I was here.
Tell them about the mission? Tell them you're just looking for food and ammo? Or tell them you're here to save them? It's your decision. Your call. I would pick one.
I decided it was best if I told the survivors the truth from the beginning. They'd probably find out sooner or later anyway. As I put my clothes back on and picked up my equipment, I explained all about the fortified farm, the disease that plagued my family, and my quest for antibiotics. They seemed impressed by my bravery and allowed me to join them on the second floor. As I climbed the escalator, I realized just how wise my decision to surrender had been. There were at least 20 survivors in the building, with over half of them armed with shotguns or rifles. The rest had an assortment of vicious-looking melee weapons. As soon as I reached the top, I was directed toward their leader, a tall and muscular African-American who introduced himself as Ox. Ox told me that if I wanted his help and protection, or at least to be allowed to roam his mall freely, I had to earn it. Apparently there was no longer any power in the mall, and he wanted someone to head down to the basement and turn on the generator. The last man he sent never came back.
Agree without question. Refuse, you'll get shot, dude. Or ask for extra equipment. I suggest 3.
I told him I'd be happy to help, but that I desperately needed some more equipment if I was going to survive. He grudgingly agreed and got one of his lackeys to hand over some ammo. I was then informed that I'd be taking a mechanic named Smith along with me. partly to fix the generator if it needed it, and partly to make sure I didn't try anything stupid. Smith and I went back down the escalator and through the door I had originally come through to the stairwell. We headed back down, and then Smith pointed out another doorway hidden under the stairs that I hadn't noticed before.
Open the door slowly, bust on in, or let Smith take the phone. It means let Smith go first. You got a machine gun, and he's an engineer. He will most definitely get the advantage of dying, so I go open the door slowly.
I carefully opened the door with my gun at the ready. Ox obviously thought this place was dangerous, so I kept my guard up. On the other side of the door, it was pitch black. If there were any windows, they were small, and the curtains or blinds were closed. We listened carefully for any signs of the infected, but heard nothing.
Light a match, go back and find a torch, or open the curtain. Stupidly open the curtain, that would be stupid. What if there's zombies like right there? So I'd rather light a
We
match.
weren't about to proceed without a light source, but luckily Smith had a few matches on him. We lit one and slowly made our way into the room. The match didn't offer much illumination, but it was enough to make our way to the generator without making any undue noise.
Another one.
We reached the generator. Smith promptly pulled a lever and pressed a few buttons. Apparently getting the thing up and running was as simple as that, because it immediately sprang to life. The lights in the room flashed and came on, and just in time. Our activities had disturbed a small group of infected who had been lurking in a side room, and they were now rushing toward us. I opened fire and was easily able to gun the bastards down. I raised a sigh of relief and turned to Smith, but to my horror he was lying on the floor, bleeding heavily. In the confusion I had accidentally shot him in the leg.
He requires a tourniquet, leave him to die, or shoot him and put him out with misery. You can't get first aid kit unless you get first aid kit from the previous one. So I got our first aid, so I'm gonna do it.
I knew Smith didn't have a lot of time, so I quickly removed the first aid kit from my backpack and got to work. I used a tourniquet to staunch the bleeding and then bandaged the wound. It wasn't much, but it was the best I could do. I helped him to his feet, and we headed back to the group. When we reached the stairwell, we were greeted by a terrifying noise. All the gunfire, the bright lights of the mall had attracted a large group of infected who were trying to get in any way they could.
I'm still holding Smith. Remember that.
Luckily, I had securely barricaded this area when I first entered the building. It wouldn't hold them for long, but it brought us enough time to get back to the group. By the time we got back to the group, they were already celebrating. Now the power was back on and they were focused on making the most of it while it lasted. Several had gotten one of the coffee shops up and running and were busy preparing hot food and drinks. Others were setting up a games console to entertain themselves while not on guard duty. Knowing about the threat from downstairs, it wasn't particularly reassuring. Smith had lost a lot of blood and was barely conscious when we arrived. Once I told him he had been shot, not bitten, Ox ordered some of the few women among the survivors to take care of him.
Alright, you warn him about the zombies, which is one. Two is ask for a reward. Hey, what I get? Stupid. Get a cup of coffee? You saw them, dude. If you're friendly, you should ask to warn them of danger. One.
There was no time to relax. The infected would be inside very soon, and if we weren't prepared, we'd be overrun in minutes. Before I could even finish explaining the situation, Ox was barking orders at his men, getting them into the best position to deal with the threat. They were only just in time. Suddenly, the basement door burst open, and a seemingly unstoppable horde of infected zombies charged through. The first wave was gunned down before they reached the escalator, but more and more of them just kept on coming. Every gun in the building was blazing while survivors armed with clubs and axes struggled to keep the tide of monsters from climbing the stairs. I had no idea if we'd be able to fight them off or not.
Good battle. Stay and fight. You've been out of mission. Run from the pharmacy? That's your mission. Your main goal. Well, get the hell out. Without the pharmacy? No.
I knew there was no way we'd be able to fight off the infected horde. My thoughts turned once again to my dying wife, and I realized that this might be my last chance to secure the antibiotics she so desperately needed. While the others held the infected at bay, I ran as fast as I could for the pharmacy.
Pharmacy's right here, just to let y'all know.
It took me less than a minute to reach the former drugstore. It had been totally untouched by looters, and all the various medicines were readily available. I could still hear the battle raging behind me, and I knew that I didn't have much time. Unfortunately, I wasn't alone. It seemed that the infected had found another way into the building, and several of them were now shambling straight toward me.
We'll get the mister at the back, or you might have a chance to close the shutter, or hide behind the counter and die. Of course, I pick 2, as quickly as I can. What do you want them to do? Huh?
They sprang immediately into action, jumping up to grab the bottom of the heavy iron shutters and pulling them down before the infected could get inside. I was only just in time. Had I have taken just one more second to lock them in place, I would have been devoured for sure. Now that I had the luxury of time, I thoroughly searched the pharmacy for the antibiotics I needed. I filled my backpack with as much of the stuff as I could, and then made my way out of the shop through the back door.
Just to let you know, you are in the pharmacy, and then you are closing the gate, so they won't come in. Anyways, the survivors die, so yeah. And then there's a back door for the pharmacy. Luckily for me, for him.
I found myself in some sort of staff-only area that would normally have been off-limits to the general public. There were corridors leading to various offices and storage areas behind the back of the shops. But I had no time for sightseeing. I followed the signs and headed straight for the stairs. As I turned a corner, I heard a scream and the sounds of a struggle. One of the female survivors had also tried to make an escape, but had been ambushed by one of the infected. She had dropped her pistol and was now struggling to keep the monster from biting her.
Ignore her plight and let her die? Wrestle the zombie off her? That is stupid. You save her, but you'll die, actually. Steal a gun, ammo, and van, or shoot them both. I feel bad for this. All of these are not good, but at least I'll shoot them both.
There was no way I could get a clean shot at the zombie, and even if I could, she had probably been infected already. I shot them both and then carried onto the stairs. As I reached the stairwell, I became all too aware that the sound of gunfire, a constant companion for the last few minutes, had suddenly stopped. Had the survivors fought off the infected, or had they all been wiped out? I had no way of knowing either way.
Take the stairs to the roof, or take the elevator to the roof. Or head back to others, and I'll take the stairs to the roof.
I wasn't going to risk heading back to the group. In my heart, I knew they were all dead, and either way I needed to get home to save my wife. I ran up the stairs, out of the fire escape, and onto the roof. I stepped out into the open air and breathed a sigh of relief. I was on the top level of a multi-story car park which seemed to be blessedly free of zombies. There were also plenty of parked cars in relatively good condition, perfect for a swift and safe ride home. I suddenly noticed movement out of the corner of my eye. I span round and took aim, expecting it to be one of the infected. To my relief and surprise, it was a handful of survivors who had managed to escape the carnage downstairs. Before I could meet up with them, something leaped at me from the shadows, knocking my gun from my hands and nearly pushing me to the floor. I regained my balance just in time to defend myself from the creature's next assault.
Punch him in the face? That's not effective, since they have no pain, since they're dead already. Grab his neck and push it over the railing? That's your choice. Knee it in the groin? Your choice too. So I pick two.
As the zombie